I knew U of M would provide me with an excellent undergraduate education in engineering.
This school ended up being the best opportunity I had with golf, and I also liked the academics.
In German history, they had, some of the top professors.
I decided to come to swim for public health.
We took a trip out when I was doing my college searches, and I fell in love with the campus.
In social work and political science, I'm in the joint PhD program. And there was no other program like it in the country.
I was choosing between law school and Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Clown College, so, I mean, yeah, seriously.
It was good for my medical school, and it also had a graduate program.
Because of their really good educational technology program.
So here I am.
It's part of what made me who I am today. It's why I'm here on stage, trying to do my best to help others like me. When I looked at what Michigan said that they had to offer, it looked like everything I needed was going to be there, and that it was going to be fairly straightforward. And then in reality, it was more that there are things that are offered, but that you have to do a lot more than I was led on to know, for yourself.
My advisor was like, we'll have to work something out. But then I made some comment about, and I just had to give up my driver's license. And he looked at me like, wow, your eyes really are bad. That, I think, was, they realized, like, they're dealing with someone, that they don't usually deal with, someone with a visual impairment.
I found Michigan to be extremely supportive. And I found it of students, I found it of support services people, I found it just everywhere. And it's been really wonderful.
When they say, well, it's not legal to mandate, well, what difference does that make? It's your job to help me. I'm a human being. I expect to be treated like one.
I'd had really heinous things said to me by one of the deans there, who told me things like, if you have the disabilities you claim, you don't belong in the school, you don't belong in the profession of law. I think some people have some very ignorant attitudes about disabilities.
The medical school and the medical community is very much a family unit. They take care of their own, per se. And you kind of show your worthiness of like, yes, I can handle this, and yes, I am capable. They're going to do everything they can to make sure you get through.
She told me to never pick the phone to put Michigan because my ECT scores were not high enough, even though I had being able to read, and I had that extracurricular activities. She told me to start interviewing another college. It was very heartbreaking because I really wanted to come to Michigan. They were psychotic to Michigan. It really motivated me to try and prove myself, to try and prove that I was good enough.
Unfortunately, the pool of students with disabilities, students who are female and minorities, the pool is so small that I thought that it was to my advantage to disclose all these issues.
Once the admissions people saw that, I really was making an effort to get in, and I really wanted to be a student at the University of Michigan, they really make sure and help you out and make sure you're doing things right and that you do things on time.
It's a big debate now as to whether or not I disclose on my application that I'm deaf, because my undergraduate transcript, I had no support services. I didn't have an interpreter or anything. So my GPA is, my transcript is all over the place.
I had to retake my MCAT, my medical college admissions test, because my scores weren't high enough to even get me close to anywhere. So I had to retake it, and then the option was, do I ask and request accommodations on that exam or do I not? And I already felt that I was dumb, and I didn't want anybody else to think that.
because most of us don't self-disclose in our application process, they don't know we have a learning disability. They don't know the nature of it. It took a lot of work to get my voice heard in the various places that need to happen. Once that got moving, it ended up coming together well. And I think to some extent it was sort of strategic.
And even if I do have to take a few steps back for every number I take forward, at least I know that I'm committed to the decision to keep on going.
Some of my professors don't really grasp or appreciate like what it entails for me just to be a student. They think they tend to overlook the fact that I do deal with more than the average student does on a daily basis.
I was a GSI, a graduate student instructor for that particular course, and I had a student who was visually impaired. And this was interesting because I had gotten all the books on tape. It was my first GSI experience. So I wasn't sure, can I do it? Can I keep up with the reading? So on the first day of class, I announced to the students, I'm visually impaired.
I may not be a parent, but I'm visually impaired. And the reason I bring that up, or the reason I like to tell my students at the beginning of the semester.
I said, if there are any problems, people need to come and talk to me. This woman, the last week of class, she comes up to me and says, I'm visually impaired. I was like, but I have all the books on tape. We could just share them. I'd be glad to. And so, in one way I was frustrated, but yet on the other hand, I know that there are certain times in people's lives that maybe she was not ready for either telling me at the time, and it was probably what forced her to tell me was the fact that the final was coming up and she hadn't done the reading.
I was actually very discouraged, especially by some of the faculty in the College of Engineering that were trying to help. One woman told me, well, maybe chemical engineering is not for you. And it didn't make any sense to me because I hadn't taken any chemical engineering classes. She's like, everyone just told me, don't worry quite so much. People just don't know. There's a lack of education about anxiety disorders and mental health and mental illnesses in general. And it was really frustrating to get discouragement, from people that I looked up to.
She said that they were very uncomfortable with me in the class and wanted to know what was wrong with me. And those were the words she used. And she wanted me to get up in front of the class and explain it. And I said no. And then I ended up having to go to Services for Students with Disabilities and talking about this. And they said, this is discrimination. This is not fair. It's inhumane. We have to deal with it. And so we went through all these channels, and it took to finally getting to the chair of the department to get her to understand what I needed and to agree to it.
I wrote a letter to the professor saying, I can't hear you in English. I need you to look at me when you give this exam. And he said that being able to understand conversation as it's normally spoken with people not looking at you all the time is part of the test. And I said, well, that's well and good, but I'm deaf, and this went on for 3 semesters, and by the time that it became a serious issue, I was profoundly deaf. And I'm like, I'm deaf. This is not an issue of my attention or my ability. I'm asking you to do the same thing in Japanese that I need you to do in English. And it just could not get through to this man.
Nothing that I've asked for, as far as I'm concerned, has been a privileged type of situation. All the accommodations that I've requested have really put me on a level playing field with everybody else.
I remember one time I went to the bathroom. I could get in myself because I would just, push the door open with my chair. But then getting out was a problem because I'd have to pull the door with one hand and then drive at the same time. So what I ended up doing was waiting for someone, to come in the door and let me out. And I remember one day, I waited for like 25 minutes to a half an hour for someone to come. And finally I called DPS and said, my name is Kerry Larrabee and I'm stuck in the bathroom at South Quad. Can you come and let me out? And of course, by the time they came, somebody had already came and let me out. But I think that kind of opened their eyes, because a week after that, sure enough, there was a handicapped door opener, and everything was fine. So
Yeah, what's up, man? You want anything to eat?
I was really fortunate to get this place. It's up on North Campus, and I live with a really good friend, but he also, you know, he's my attendant, I guess you could say, in terms of helping me down at night. I worked with University Housing and the Office for Students with Disability. I'm the first disabled student to actually live in this housing unit, so they were really excited to see if it actually worked for a person of disability, and they were really accepting to change anything in the unit itself to accommodate to my needs.
With paratransit, it's really nice because, say, I have a meeting that just came up that's not a part of my everyday schedule. I can just call them up, you know, that day, maybe even a half an hour, even 15 minutes before I want to leave and say, you know, I need a slip at 2:20 or whatever. But here during spring and summer with Ann Arbor Yellow Cab or AATA, Ann Arbor Transportation Authority, you have to call at least 24 hours in advance.
And having to take a taxi everywhere you go at any second, it's just not very accommodating. So now I drive my own vehicle. I was fortunate enough to be at a certain level where my impairment doesn't restrict me from driving. It's a modified vehicle, and I drive right from my wheelchair. So I get around campus that way. And I mean, you never know what freedom driving is until it's taken away.
They saw it as like almost a scam. They'd go, oh, time and a half, you know, wow, that, you know, that makes it so easy. And they didn't really grasp that time and a half means, you know, that's what's putting me at just the fair playing level. That's like just putting me at the starting line.
The professor can announce, or you can announce, that you need a student to volunteer to take notes for you, or you can copy their notes, photocopy, something like that. And so if someone volunteers, then you have to rely on them, which is a lot of issues. Is their handwriting okay? Are they reliable? Are they coming to lecture every day?
If they will not provide scribes, you know, for people to, you know, like on task or whatever, they need to find people who will know, you know, what's going on, you know, instead of just sending some freshman who doesn't know anything, you know.
Sometimes I've had professors who don't quite understand. I had this one professor who was very intimidated by having real-time captioning in the classroom. It was a piece of technology she didn't understand, but it was where she didn't try and learn about when it was about. And I saw it happening because as it affected me. She wasn't making the effort to reach out to me and treat me as a member of her class. She saw me as the girl sitting next to the real-time captioning.
It's so hard because you have to learn to rework your mindset, your thoughts, your life. The first step is faith. Faith that there's so much more out there that you deserve to experience.
The Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990. Prior to the Americans with Disabilities Act, we had Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, which also applied to the university. But the Americans with Disabilities Act marked a dramatic change across the country for colleges and universities. Not because the scope of their responsibilities expanded tremendously, but because there was much more attention on colleges and universities. A lot of changes have taken place here in the last 10 years. Everything from architectural changes to programmatic changes to resource distribution. Because it's a big university, there were so many resources available to me. Both resources that affected me as an average student and that supported me as a student with a disability. The opportunity is there. A lot of it has centered around the adaptive technology computing side. Without a doubt, the university has to continue to invest in technology, new technology. the kind of conveniences we want. Large screens, portable computers. Those things were all developed to accommodate either, as I said, the needs of the military or people with disabilities. The whole ergonomic furniture movement arises out of the needs that people with disabilities have. Let's enable people who really need this technology to access basic aspects of their education or their employment at the university.
Open email.
Let's bring those resources here, and we'll be able to eventually distribute them throughout the campus.
This is me talking to my computer. Period. New paragraph.
So I think the challenge here isn't whether or not the person is covered, but it's how, as a community, we respond.
And those kind of negative thoughts are so ever present that it's who you think you always have been.
I also think that maybe there's something scary about it, because it could be any of us. I mean, any one of us could become disabled, and maybe it's hard to look into that mirror.
They don't speak right at you or act like you can do anything, and they're always surprised to find out that I'm a college student. And then they're surprised to find out where I go to school. And they think, you know, how could you go to U of M? And so sometimes they'll even say that.
When I come to UM, I really didn't experience a lot of classroom prejudice from people thinking, but I can't speak for myself,
You say the word mental illness and everyone immediately thinks of crazy or insane or psychiatric hospitals where people are locked up in straitjackets.
I feel like dumb, because especially if they know that I'm a medical student, and then they're like, why are you so slow with this? And then if they know that I'm Mexican on top of that, then they're like, oh, you just got out of medical school because you're Mexican and you're just not smart enough. So there's that stigma that I've got to kind of keep on top of, is that I don't want people to think that I got into school because of my affirmative action. I got into school because I can handle the work.
And there's the problem with when I'm dealing with someone I don't know, be it a future employer or whatnot. What do you do? Do you tell them? Do you not tell them? And it's sketchy because you don't know how people are going to react. I certainly feel better when I tell them, because then I can sort of, put it on them. I mean, if they don't want me at that point, that's fine. They also might not want me because I have long hair. I don't know.
At first glance, they may say, well, is he really, legit or up to par for this level of study? Can he get around and do the things that an everyday student would do? But I think after meeting me and interacting with me, they'll find out that I'm as normal as anyone.
They come up to me and they say, what's wrong with you? And I don't think that's the right terminology or words to use, because I happen to have a chronic illness. I happen to have a disability. But there's nothing right or wrong about it. And also, everyone in the world has something that maybe they don't want people to know.
I wasn't very open with it because I didn't feel comfortable because of the stigma. I didn't feel comfortable telling people about it because I was even judging myself.
For me to get this diagnosis, it just reconfirmed that premise that I had, that I was dumb. And I've got documentation now that I'm dumb. I've got a disability. I've got a learning disability, and it really does a number on my self-esteem for a while. And I was like, no one is going to know about this.
I'm able to pass as somebody straight and, kind of maneuver through the world as a straight person if I choose to do so. Likewise, I could choose to pass as not having a learning disability.
I didn't know my condition was related to mental health, but I went to the Women in Engineering office and I said, I need help. It seemed like they were doing great things, but when it came down to it, we weren't discussing the real issues of the feelings of inadequacy students have here, inferiority women often feel, seclusion, isolation that I did to myself.
I do feel a little self-conscious, though, when I'm in social environments, especially when I don't know people, because I always wonder if they're wondering or thinking about, what's wrong with her, or, she looks so young to have a cane, and then especially, around cute guys, I feel very self-conscious, and I try to hide it, and I can't, it's ridiculous, but I do, I try.
I spread that attempt to keep about it is not how I am, that's not how I view myself, but that's not how I'm going to be viewed in society. It's going to be the night I change that is to tell myself to do something about it is stop hating myself, is don't change the attitude, to be the people with disabilities and people with disabilities.
And it's made me aware also then how people who can't hide their disabilities or their skin color or whatever it's going to be, are forced to deal with these things on a daily basis.
Creating a new you. Learning to ignore those negative thoughts and rediscover the good ones that are still there inside.
I don't know, because there are lots of problems, I like to keep it covered up, whatever, but I think that it is not a part of my identity now. No, I take it back. It is part of my identity, but I don't characterize myself as a depressed person.
My anxiety disorder definitely puts me at a disadvantage, and I've had to fight through many of my own physical limitations. But it's a part of me. I wouldn't give it up. It helps drive me to do what I do and move the way I do.
I think that at this time of my life, my identity would have been changing anyway. I mean, it's kind of a time of total self-discovery at college. You're constantly meeting new people, constantly trying new things, trying to figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life.
I view myself first and foremost as an African American, then as a woman, then as being disabled. And why, I have no idea, but I do.
I don't let anything keep me from doing what I truly want, and whether that's being an engineer or doing anything. So one of my buddies gave me the model, and it's no limits, and so I've been signing my emails and everything like that since the beginning. So that's what I live by, and that's what I feel like. So
I would much rather be a student who doesn't need these extra assistance. And I'd also like other people to see that we're just a student too. I mean, we're just like everyone else, and we want the same things in life, and it's not something so foreign and different.
People expect me to be a super couple, and I'm not a super couple. I'm damned if I'll be a super couple. No, when I've been there, no, I'm not going to do it. No, and if people think credible, I'm not being independent enough. Well, I don't love that application. I live here by myself. I live in this apartment by myself. And I run my business by myself. And if does not be independent, then I don't know what is. That's tough shit. And you caught me on that.
At the university, I think that those of us who have disabilities need to be valued, not just accommodated.
students with disabilities are not recognized as a minority group, but I think that, there is an invisible population. We would talk about diversity, it's usually in color, but it's not in one, it's not as much of what shapes the experience, which is something that the disability does.
Because if you made it in your start for engineering, attitude was what you want, but students, nobody goes out for software engineer's opinion, and I don't want somebody to have to be required to meet me because I'm disabled.
Do I see myself as part of the university's diversity that they spend so much time on? No, I don't think so. I think the university prides itself so much on diversity and African Americans, homosexuals, or whatever. But I think the disabled population is kind of, I don't want to say hidden, but it's just not noticed as much and really paid attention to as much as some of the other groups on campus.
When you have a group of students who are just the same, you really limit, you limit what you can learn or what you can take in.
During my freshman year of college, something a certain black student in one of my classes had said about affirmative action really changed my perspective on it. And even now, more so that I've experienced what it's like to be a disabled student as compared to pretty much to a normal student on campus, I really believe that you have to take into account certain things that students go through and certain advantages and disadvantages that students have.
How boring would things be if everyone saw things the way their parents saw them? It'd be terrible.
I want to concentrate in assistive technology and specifically how technology can be used to help children with special needs in the classroom.
I'm looking at the engineering.
My dream job, I guess, after graduating would be a play-by-play broadcaster.
I will get my degree in interdisciplinary engineering, but I'm also pre-med.
I also needed something that was with people constantly, that I could interact with, that I could feel like I had relationships with. And that's exactly what a family doc has. And so that's what I want to do.
I think I'll enter industry in the field of pacemaker technology or neurology and electrical units.
I love medicine, and it's the way that I think about everything. It's what I've always wanted to do from the youngest age I can remember, so just decided to do it.
Ideally, universities, and particularly the University of Michigan, will be a place that says it's not the law that motivates us to do this. It's because we believe in diversity. We believe in providing education to as many people as we can, as many different kinds of people as we can. And those include people with disabilities, and they include people from a whole variety of different kinds of backgrounds. We just want people to be able to learn here, to learn and to contribute.
So you got your steak. I think I'm finished.